Colonel Thomas Tom Callahan carried his 78 years like a well-worn leather jacket, comfortable, dignified, and showing the honest marks of a life fully lived. At Chicago O'Hare Airport, he moved through the bustling crowds with the same measured pace that had once carried him through rice paddies in Vietnam and parade grounds at Fort Bragg. His gray hair was neatly combed, his khaki slacks pressed, and his navy blazer bore only the slightest wrinkle from the taxi ride. Most travelers rushing past wouldn't have noticed the slight favoring of his left leg, a souvenir from shrapnel near Da Nang, or the way he carried his right shoulder just a fraction higher than his left. They certainly wouldn't have guessed that tucked discreetly in his wallet, behind a worn photo of his late wife Martha, and a more recent one of his granddaughter Emma, in her army dress blues, was a faded copy of the citation that came with his Medal of Honor. Tom rarely spoke of that sweltering afternoon in 1968, when he'd charged into enemy fire 3 times to pull wounded soldiers to safety, then held his position for 6 hours while reinforcements fought their way through. To him it wasn't heroism, it was Tuesday, and his boys needed help. The medal felt heavier some days than others, but never as heavy as the memories of the friends who didn't make it home. Today's journey to Washington held special meaning. The White House was hosting a commemoration for Medal of Honor recipients, and Tom had been personally invited by the president. His granddaughter Emma, now a captain stationed at Fort Campbell, had insisted on using her frequent flyer miles and 3 months of saved pay to book him first class on American Eagle Airlines. "Grandpa, you've earned every comfort this world can offer," she'd said over their last phone call. "Besides, your back can't handle a cramped coach seat for 3 hours." The ticket confirmation in his jacket pocket read Seat 2A, a window seat where he could watch the country he'd served roll by 30,000 feet below. He'd been looking forward to the quiet, maybe even a short nap before arriving refreshed for the ceremony. But as Tom approached Gate B7 at American Eagle, something felt off. The gate agents looked frazzled, passengers were arguing, and the departure board flickered ominously. He couldn't shake the feeling that his carefully planned day was about to take an unexpected turn. Linda Morrison had been a gate agent for American Eagle for 8 years, and she prided herself on following procedures to the letter. When the computer screen flashed red alerts about the aircraft change for Flight 447 to Dulles, she barely looked up from her keyboard. Equipment changes happened. Passengers would have to deal with it. Standing beside her, Marcus Wright, barely 6 months on the job, watched nervously as angry passengers formed a growing line at their podium. The original Boeing 757 had been grounded with hydraulic issues, replaced by a smaller Airbus A320 with significantly fewer first-class seats. "Ma'am, there must be some mistake," Tom said quietly when Linda handed him a new boarding pass. He studied the flimsy paper. "Seat 34C, middle seat, economy. I've had seat 2A, confirmed for 4 months. I'm traveling to a White House ceremony for Sir," Linda interrupted, her voice taking on that practiced tone of fake sympathy. "Aircraft changes are beyond our control. Due to operational requirements, we've had to reassign passengers based on our priority system. Your ticket was purchased with partner miles, which places it lower in our hierarchy than revenue-paying elite members." Tom felt his chest tighten. "This ceremony is for Medal of Honor recipients. My granddaughter used her own savings too." "I understand your disappointment," Linda continued, not understanding at all. "But our contract of carriage clearly states that seat assignments aren't guaranteed. Seat 34C is the best available option. You can file for a partial refund after your flight." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, recognizing something in the elderly passenger's bearing that Linda seemed to miss entirely. The way Tom stood, straight despite his age, hands clasped behind his back, reminded Marcus of his own grandfather, who'd served in Korea. "Ma'am," Marcus whispered to Linda, "maybe we should check if there are any special protocols for—" "The computer assigns seats based on policy," Linda snapped. "I don't make exceptions." Tom looked down at the economy boarding pass, then back at his original first-class ticket. The casual dismissal stung more than the physical discomfort he'd face in a middle seat for 3 hours. It wasn't about luxury. It was about the respect that seemed to evaporate in the face of corporate algorithms and indifferent bureaucracy. I see, he said softly, taking the boarding pass. Thank you. As Tom walked away to find a seat in the crowded gate area, Marcus watched him go, a knot forming in his stomach. Something about this felt very, very wrong. Settling into an uncomfortable plastic chair, Tom pulled out his phone and scrolled to Emma's contact. He started to dial, then stopped. What would he tell her? That her generous gift, purchased with money she'd saved by eating ramen noodles and skipping movies, had been casually dismissed by an airline computer. Instead, he remembered something else. When Emma had booked the ticket, she'd mentioned American Eagle's Veterans Services line, a direct number for military personnel and distinguished veterans facing travel issues. They have a special desk just for heroes. Grandpa, she'd said, if anything goes wrong, you call them directly. Promise me. Tom had smiled and nodded, never imagining he'd need it. Now, fishing through his wallet, he found the small card where Emma had written the number in her careful handwriting. Veterans Services direct line, for when they need to remember who you are. The phone rang twice before a calm professional voice answered. American Eagle Veterans Services, this is Robert speaking. How may I assist you today? Tom took a breath. This is Colonel Thomas Callahan, Medal of Honor recipient. I'm at Gate B7 for Flight 447 to Dulles. I had a confirmed first-class seat for a White House ceremony, but I've been involuntarily downgraded to a middle seat in economy due to an equipment change. The gate agent was unresponsive to the circumstances. Robert's typing stopped abruptly. Colonel Callahan, please confirm your confirmation number and current location. As Tom provided the details, he could hear Robert's fingers flying across a keyboard, then a sharp intake of breath. Colonel, please stay exactly where you are. Do not board the aircraft. This situation is being escalated to the highest levels immediately. Someone will be with you in less than 10 minutes. The line went dead. Tom stared at his phone, uncertain what to expect. In his experience, corporate promises of immediate action usually meant another layer of bureaucracy. But something in Robert's voice suggested this might be different. Around him, economy passengers were beginning to board. The elderly man in 34C, his assigned seat, slowly made his way down the jet bridge. Tom closed his eyes and waited, wondering if Emma's faith in the system would prove justified. 8 minutes after Tom's call ended, the relative calm of Gate B7 exploded into chaos. Passengers looked up from their phones as a small convoy of airline executives burst through the terminal corridors, moving with the urgency of first responders heading to a 5-alarm fire. Leading the charge was William Bill Harrison, CEO of American Eagle Airlines, his usually immaculate gray suit rumpled and his face flushed with exertion and something approaching panic. Flanking him were two senior vice presidents, one for operations, the other for customer experience, and his executive assistant, who was barking orders into a Bluetooth headset as they practically sprinted through the concourse. Linda Morrison and Marcus Wright watched in stunned silence as the highest echelons of their company descended upon their gate. Other passengers stopped boarding, sensing drama. A few pulled out phones to record whatever was about to unfold. Harrison reached the podium, slightly out of breath but radiating authority. He didn't even glance at Linda or Marcus. His eyes swept the gate area with laser focus. Where is he? Harrison demanded, his voice tight with controlled urgency. Where is Colonel Thomas Callahan? Linda's hand trembled as she pointed toward Tom, who was still sitting quietly near the window, eyes closed. There, sir. By the windows. Harrison and his entourage moved swiftly across the gate area. Passengers parted like the Red Sea. When they reached Tom, Harrison composed himself visibly, then spoke in a voice that carried across the suddenly quiet gate area. Colonel Callahan, sir, my name is William Harrison. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of American Eagle Airlines. Tom opened his eyes, taking in the flustered executive and his nervous retinue. Mr. Harrison, Colonel, on behalf of every employee of American Eagle Airlines, I offer you my deepest and most sincere apologies for the completely inexcusable treatment you have received today. There is no excuse, none, for what has happened here. The CEO's words carried across the gate area, and every passenger within earshot turned to listen. This was clearly no ordinary corporate apology. Harrison continued, his voice growing stronger. The handling of your seating situation represents a catastrophic failure of our policies, our training and our basic human decency. It should never have happened, and it will never happen again. Behind them, the VP of Operations was already on his phone, speaking in urgent clipped tones. The VP of Customer Experience was reviewing something on a tablet, her expression grim. But Tom wasn't watching them. He was studying Harrison's face, seeing something he recognized, the look of a leader taking responsibility for his command's failures. It was a look he'd worn himself, more than once. What would Harrison do next? And would it be enough to restore not just Tom's seat, but his faith in the system his granddaughter still believed in? Harrison leaned slightly forward, his voice earnest and personal despite the crowd of onlookers. "Colonel, I need you to know that what happened here is not who we are. When I founded American Eagle 23 years ago, it was with the explicit mission to honor those who've served our country. We have protocols, sacred protocols, for situations exactly like this." He gestured toward the gate podium, where Linda stood frozen. "Those protocols were either ignored or unknown, and that failure stops with me. Right now, this very moment, we are going to make this right." Harrison turned to his VP of Operations. "David, what's the status on first-class reconfiguration?" "Sir, we can create space by upgrading 2 of our own executives to the earlier flight. Colonel Callahan will have seat 1A, the best seat on the aircraft. Make it happen." "No." Harrison's voice brooked no argument. "And David, Flight 447 doesn't leave this gate until Colonel Callahan is seated comfortably in first class. I don't care if we have to hold connecting flights in Charlotte." Tom raised a hand slightly. "Mr. Harrison, you don't need to, Colonel. With respect, we absolutely do need to." Harrison's interruption was firm but respectful. "This isn't just about a seat. It's about honor. It's about remembering that everything we have, our freedom to run businesses, to fly safely through American airspace, to live without fear, exists because of people like you." The CEO paused, collecting his thoughts. "You charged into enemy fire to save your fellow soldiers. You've carried the weight of that medal, and the responsibility it represents, for over 50 years. The least we can do is ensure you travel to honor your fellow recipients with the dignity and comfort you've earned 10 times over." Around the gate area, passengers were filming, texting, and watching with rapt attention. This wasn't typical corporate theater. This was something real and raw and deeply human. Harrison continued, "Your entire trip, this one and any future travel with American Eagle, will be complimentary, with our highest level of service for life. And we're establishing the Callahan Protocol, effective immediately, to ensure this never happens to an authority." The CEO's face, seeing genuine remorse and determination. "Mr. Harrison, I appreciate your personal attention. This was never about the seat, not really. It was about being seen, being recognized as more than just an algorithm's decision." "Exactly." Harrison nodded vigorously. "And that's where we failed you catastrophically today." He turned back toward Linda, his expression hardening like winter frost. "Morrison, you and I will be having a very detailed conversation in my office once this aircraft is airborne. As will your supervisor and the person who trained you on our veterans protocols." Linda looked as if she might faint. Marcus, standing beside her, looked relieved that someone was finally taking charge. But even as Harrison made his promises and issued his orders, Tom wondered, would this change anything beyond today? Or would the next veteran face the same indifferent bureaucracy? Once the cameras stopped rolling, and the CEO returned to his corner office, within minutes, Gate B7 transformed into a model of military-style efficiency. The VP of Operations personally escorted 2 American Eagle executives off the aircraft, both willingly surrendering their first-class seats with good humor, and obvious relief that they weren't the ones facing the CEO's wrath. Marcus Wright found himself temporarily promoted to senior gate agent, handling passenger questions, while Linda was quietly but firmly escorted away from the podium by human resources personnel, who had appeared with remarkable speed. "Colonel," Harrison said, personally taking Tom's arm, "if you're ready, I'd like to escort you aboard personally." As they walked down the jet bridge, Harrison continued talking. "I want you to know that everything we've discussed today will be documented and implemented. The Callahan Protocol isn't corporate PR.
It's policy, effective immediately across all our hubs. They paused at the aircraft door, where Captain Janet Rodriguez and First Officer Mike Chen were waiting. Both had been briefed on the situation. Colonel Callahan, Captain Rodriguez said, offering a crisp salute. "It's an honor to have you aboard. We'll get you to Washington safely and comfortably." Tom returned the salute with practiced precision, then smiled. "Thank you, Captain. Fair winds and following seas." "Hoo yes, sir," she grinned back. Seat 1A was everything Emma had hoped for. Spacious, comfortable, with a perfect view of the wing and the ground crew below. The flight attendant, Sarah Kim, introduced herself personally, and ensured Tom had everything he needed: a blanket for his back, coffee the way he liked it, and a quiet word that the crew was honored to have him aboard. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, Tom looked out his window and saw Harrison still standing on the tarmac, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing emphatically. Even from 30 feet away and through thick glass, it was clear the CEO was delivering some very pointed instructions to someone on the other end of that call. The engine spooled up, and American Eagle Flight 447 taxied toward the runway. Tom settled back into his seat, finally allowing himself to relax. Emma's gift had been honored after all, just not in the way anyone expected. But as Chicago fell away beneath them, Tom couldn't help wondering what happened to other veterans who didn't have granddaughters who knew about special phone numbers, who didn't have medals that made CEOs sprint through airports. The real test of Harrison's promises wouldn't be this flight. It would be the next veteran, who faced an indifferent gate agent with no cameras rolling and no executives watching. 3 hours later, Tom walked off Flight 447 at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, rested and dignified. Emma was waiting for him at the gate, having driven down from Fort Campbell for the ceremony. "Grandpa," she hugged him tightly. "How was the flight? Did everything go smoothly?" Tom smiled, deciding not to mention the drama. Emma had given him such a thoughtful gift. Why tarnish it with tales of corporate failures and last-minute rescues? "Smooth as glass, sweetheart. Your gift was perfect." But word travels fast in military circles. Within days, Emma heard whispers from other Army officers about an incident at O'Hare, about an airline CEO personally intervening for a Medal of Honor recipient, about protocols being rewritten and gate agents being retrained. When she called Tom, concerned, he just chuckled. "Sometimes the system works exactly like it should, Emma. Sometimes good people in important positions remember what really matters." The White House ceremony was everything it should have been: dignified, moving, and appropriately honoring the men and women who had served with extraordinary valor. Tom sat in the East Room alongside 37 other recipients, listening as the president spoke about courage, sacrifice, and the debt that could never be repaid. Back at American Eagle headquarters in Dallas, the changes were swift and comprehensive. The Callahan Protocol became standard training for every gate agent, customer service representative, and manager. Linda Morrison was transferred to a back-office position focused on policy documentation, her attention to procedures redirected toward helping create better ones. Marcus Wright was fast-tracked for promotion, and became a trainer for the new Veterans Service protocols. Most importantly, Robert at the Veterans Services desk found his phone ringing less often, not because fewer veterans were traveling, but because frontline employees were finally equipped to handle situations with the respect and understanding they deserved. 6 months later, Tom received a letter from a Marine veteran named Carlos Mendez, thanking him for a smooth first-class upgrade when his Purple Heart status had been properly recognized by an American Eagle gate agent in Phoenix. Carlos mentioned that the agent, a young woman named Jessica, had specifically referenced the Callahan Protocol when ensuring he received the honor he deserved. Tom smiled, tucked the letter into his desk drawer next to Emma's photo, and reflected on something he'd learned long ago in Vietnam. Sometimes one person's quiet dignity, combined with another person's willingness to do what's right, could change an entire system. True honor wasn't about flying first class. It was about ensuring that everyone who earned it was treated with the respect they deserved, whether cameras were rolling or not. And sometimes, just sometimes, corporate America remembered that profits came second to principles, especially when those principles were defended by people who had given everything for their country. Emma had been right about one thing: heroes did deserve to fly first class, but more than that, they deserved to be seen, recognized, and honored by a nation that understood the true cost of freedom.